years ago, and he's been an amazing advocate for Sage and using Sage a lot. We've had a lot of conversations since then about using Sage in all sorts of different teaching. So, Jeff Denny from Mercer University.
Thank you, Jason. It's good to meet many of you I know from various online interactions. It's been fun to meet you in person. So I'm going to try to split things in half here. Let me see if I can gauge my time about right and talk initially kind of about the project that I'm working on, which is Sage Widgets for use in calculus, and then I want to tell a few other uses I've had for Sage in teaching, because I've heard some folks express interest in things about different particular courses, and then a little bit of Sage for the dark side. All right, so my idea was, you have these moments where someone stops you and asks you a question after class, or maybe in class you suddenly realize, gosh, I wish I'd had a bit of Sage I could have used, but I don't really have time to stop now. So you'd like to have stuff you can go grab and use quickly, even if it's just 3 lines of stuff that's already been typed in and you only want to change one function or something. So it saves you a lot of effort. And I have some colleagues who are very interested in this kind of thing. They've told me, well, if it was kind of written for me and I could just modify it, then I'd use it all the time. So, and you don't have to log in since we have the cell server now. It's just all kind of right there. So that's my idea, is come up with little code snippets and interacts for use in class. Obviously, you want them to be simple and easy, and that's very difficult because, as you start playing with this stuff, you really want to tweak it out, right? And so it takes a lot of discipline to be simple. Like I said, wanted to be kind of on-the-fly stuff, not so much formal presentation, although you could use them that way. And arrange them by topic and have them run in the single-cell server. And I really like the database that I guess Jason set up at Sage Math.
Harold Shelley, yeah.
Is that the same as the interact.sagemath.org?
No.
Is there any relation?
No.
Let's see here.
Harold
Should
Shelley
there be?
Yeah, Harold Shelley set this up. It's a lot lighter weight than the interact.sagemath.org.
Yeah, so it's kind of a little database. You pick your topic and what you want to have, and then when you get down to your example, you just click on that and the code pops up right here. And now, some of it can be short, some of it can be longer, and you click evaluate and then boom, you got it right there. So this is pretty slick. I think this is really great because it's all in one place. Click on the topic you want, up comes the code, and boom, you can run it and use it right there. So you don't have to go hunting very far to find stuff. It's all kind of right there for you. So that's my inspiration here, what I think that I would like things to look like in the long run. Whoops. Okay. So my plan was to select some topics from calculus. Fortunately, I actually really got started on this 2 years ago when I was teaching Calc 1 and Calc 2 in the same semester. So kind of as I went, I was building things. I've been teaching a lot of statistics. That's our new big course. We're teaching as much of that as we are calculus these days, and you probably are too, given all the changes in the pre-med curriculum and the drive we're seeing there with the MCAT. And then, so writing widgets, and I've been going back and modifying the ones I've already written. And then, I've got to get the widget somehow into the database format, which is a very plain text file format, but it does have quotes in certain places and commas in certain places. So it takes a little bit of effort there. And then figure out how to get it to a server. And so here are some examples of things I've cooked up. I mean, some of them are pretty straightforward. Just a simple interact that's going to let you, put in a list of functions, put in a domain, y-axis range, and there you go. So you need something quick and dirty, you can just plot it right there. So not complicated, but hopefully useful. I really like doing the Bezier curves. Even in Calc 1, I like to sneak this in. No, they don't really know the stuff to do all of the vector kind of calculation you might prefer to do with it, but who cares? It's a lot of fun, and it has applications, and they like that. And so I've got do the quadratic version because it's simpler, and you got your 3 points, and you plot the points, and then the curve. I actually have an animation, but it didn't run in the cell server. I think animation, I don't know what I was doing, but it wasn't working when I was messing with this yesterday. But I've got an animation that'll let your point track across here, which is kind of nice. I am always amazed how the students don't seem to have this experience with using the draw programs. And because the draw programs, you know, you actually do this, you don't realize you're doing it, and anyway, I always try to reference that and they all stare at me with blank. So, and then some others, for example, some polar plotting, where you can put in the function, give an interval, and then you got a few simple options because obviously at times you'd like to have the grid on there. Or you might prefer to plot it as theta versus r, so you're not in polar world. Let's see here. I'm going to turn that off. No, that's not working for some reason. So kind of go through some different plot modes. I need to fix that, obviously. But that's kind of the idea of what I'm looking at. Just simple things that you could use on the fly. So, so I was kind of worried about this, getting it into the database form, but it turned out not to be nearly as bad as I thought. Somewhere I learned enough Python to get by, so it went okay. So I'm just going to dump it into a text file. I've got a little code that I worked out yesterday to put all the quotes and commas and whatnot in the right place, and then write it back out, and then add it to the database. And I did all this inside the Sage notebook because I don't know, I enjoy the idea that you can attach a data file and then work with it and then output a data file right there. It's a very nice feature. And I do actually a lot of that, as you'll see in a minute. So this actually I thought might be a problem, but it really wasn't a problem, so it went very quickly. Here's where I'm going to probably need some time with Jason. Try to figure out how this beast works, and actually get my stuff in a form and be running it on my own. Need to continue cleaning up widgets, and if you have ideas for some sort of code snippet or interact, I'd love to hear them. You know, because a lot of this, you can stare at a calculus book or table of contents and come up with ideas, but a lot of it really is based on experience. What's that sticky point that people really need something to help them with, or that one thing you've tried to explain over and over again and you get frustrated because every time you try to draw it on the board you get to this moment where you really wish you had Sage with you in the classroom, and you didn't that day. So if you have any ideas, I would be very, very interested in hearing those. Now I want to switch to talk about kind of some of my own uses of Sage in teaching. I've used it for a lot of demonstrations in class and calculus and differential equations and statistics. So I think I was telling someone that I had a football player in statistics who just was fascinated. Anytime I did a demonstration, he would begin by asking me, "Did you write all that code yourself?" Sure did. "How long did it take you?" "About 20 minutes. He was fascinated. It was kind of funny. He was interesting fellow. Use some interacts for in-class activities in calculus, and this is one that I really love, and this is from David Stone. Based on an idea David Stone presented at a regional MAA meeting. He's at Georgia Southern, and he said, well, you know, it's fun to do these integrals, but okay, it's not that much fun to do these integrals, right? Just grinding out there. So mix it up a little bit. Make a square, and then put a function inside the square, and you know, we know what the area of the square is. Well, what percentage of that area is underneath that function? So you can have a good time asking all kinds of wacky things. So what I did is I created kind of a database of functions, and hopefully it'll reevaluate here. Yeah.
Show result.
No, yeah,
There's a little checkbox there. Does that make a difference?
probably.
As long as least this checkbox.
You want to try the show result?
No, it did.
Yeah, there we go. So, you know, there's one. And so it gives them something to do. So I have a worksheet that I give them, and they actually go through this and all these different functions. I usually put them in groups and have them do 2 or 3 because some of them are kind of nasty as they get, you know, you pick that group who's got the AP calculus star who's blowing everybody away. Okay, you do this one. We'll get back to you next week when you're done with that one or whatever. And so, so it's kind of fun, but it gives them something to compare with, and you know, kind of some different things. And my worksheet at the very end that I have them do, they do some experiments and kind of discover a long-term behavior thing with a particular function. So it's kind of fun, and you can display the actual results. So the checkbox will work for me here. Yeah, there we go. So that I don't have to do the calculation. So that they can find out real quickly. But it's kind of fun to see the percentage, and gives them something more than just grind out and get that the number is 3.4 and nobody cares, right? This is kind of interesting. I thought, when I saw David Stone present this, I thought this was really cool. I've also used interacts to hand out in differential equations. We teach with Blanchard, Devaney, and Hall, which we really love, and especially their lab assignments. So this time around, when I taught it this spring, I would just email them a link to the Sage single cell server and let them run it there. So they could do, if they had to slide a slider around and observe what happened with the solutions and play with parameters, they could do it all there. Most everybody enjoyed that. You know, some used their phones, some used their laptop, some occasionally had some weird problem. I couldn't ever figure out. This one student seemed she had trouble on her machine, but then when she went to the library she could run it. So I don't know what happened there. I could never quite nail it down. Anytime she brought her machine to my office, it worked. It's one of those things.
It sounds like it might have been a problem that could have been solved with the HTTPS.
Yes, yeah, that I had very, very similar issue. There, firewalls. It's really, it was really complicated.
It could have been that may be
probably what it was.
But that went well, and it's nice to just email that out. For some reason, even though Blanchard, Devaney, and Hall has real easy-to-use software that's now free on the web, almost none of them downloaded it. I think this is back to Jason's. We can make it as simple as possible, and they might not use it still. They also have these problems in that textbook where you're given a system and a vector field, and you want to match up the system with the vector field, but they don't give you many of those. They're like 2 in the book or something. And so this is okay, but you know, they want some more practice, most of them. Hopefully they want some more practice. And so this is one I made up. A little bit big. It's hard to get it on one screen, but they've got equations that I've numbered. So here they are, and then I've kind of randomized it, created the vector field, so they get to go through and check them and figure out which one's which, and then down here in the corner in small print I've got the answer. So they can do this on their own. So some of them seem to like this. This was one that I got requests for later in the semester. Can you send that one out again? We really want to practice, because I think they figured out I hadn't put it on that test and it was going to be on the final. So
This would be great to see in web work. You know, generate a plot.
It's already in web work.
So generate
using different techniques.
Right. Generate a vector field plot in Sage.
So this one just generates the vector field plot in PNG, and it's actually been around for a while. But so there's a bunch of examples. It'd be interesting to see how it compares with the stuff you've got here.
And let's see. Oh, for my purposes, behind the scenes, you know, I created. You get tired of making these things up, and so I created my own little interact just for me, where I give the eigenvalues and the eigenvectors, and it spits out the matrix and then lets me see the field so that I can experiment with it. And I can go complex to it, recognizes that, and it ignores the second eigenvector and eigenvalue, and then builds that. So this is kind of nice, and especially because, you know, you like to, you know, if you've done this, you know how long it takes if you really want them to be nice integers in there. Why we're obsessed with those, I don't know. But anyway, it takes a long while to pick nice integers.
And this is a nice contrast with web work, because web work would not do this. The web work, if you know what you want, you could just type it in pretty easily and you get your problems. But experimenting like this would not be possible. So the author would definitely want this kind of facility.
Yeah, this has been a great tool for me. You know, and I guess I could share it with the students so they could experiment some too. Right?
Sure.
So I should do that. And let's see, and then I taught a modeling course, and we did it. We used Sage pretty much daily. I used a little bit of Berkeley Madonna at times so that they were familiar with it, and that I like their sliders and some of the things they do. But And I've also tried Scilab in that course. But Sage I found to be easier to program in for them, and so it went pretty well. My biggest challenge in there is it was a small class, and half the students were folks who probably I should bring here to Sage Days. They would do nothing but program and maybe eat, and the other half were kind of they could do it and they had done it before, but they needed a little more assistance. So I had to really balance what I was doing, and probably should have spent, in retrospect, a little bit more time on the details of programming Sage earlier in the course. I was a little spoiled. I taught a mathematical biology course to all BME majors, and that's the one where I did Scilab, and they walked in and I said, we're going to learn this new language. It looks a little bit like MATLAB, and they were almost all senior BMEs, and they looked at me and said, no problem, and it really was no problem. It was really nice. So I got spoiled. So, okay, now Sage for the dark side. So my other side comes out. I do serve as associate dean half-time, so I teach half-time and administrate half-time, and so this has been a great opportunity to use Sage. You wouldn't think it would be, but I get large data sets. You know, I'm basically kind of the accountant associate dean, right? I do a lot of number crunching for the dean, and he likes to make decisions. He likes database decisions, and so I'm the one he comes to. The other associate dean deals with all the student issues, and the worst time of the year for me is when he's on vacation, and I have to do that part. That's all.
Is that your dean?
That is not my name. That's me.
Interesting guy to work.
This talk is going out on the web, just so you know.
Oh no.
That's funny.
Actually, it's kind of funny. The dean and I have similar hairstyles, and it's really in right now for some of us. But he actually went on vacation and searched for himself. I guess he was bored on vacation on Google, searched for himself, and I think my picture was the third picture that came up for him. So which was kind of funny. Different things. Success rates in courses. That's something where I get a large data set and pull it into the notebook and then parse through it. Of course, that's a lot of Python, but Sage, working in the notebook just makes that really easy, and then you can easily use those HTML tables to summarize your results, that kind of thing. This is very nice. We had a co-requisite mess in the fall that was a real nightmare, where students were supposed to be in both for example, a literature course or a women and gender studies course or history course and this 1-hour writing course, and they were tied together. But the registration system would not tie them together. So it was up to me and the other associate dean and the writing director to go through all of the freshmen and make sure that everybody was in both, and that none of the upperclassmen were in there, because we had that problem too. We couldn't lock them out. It was a nightmare. It was a real mess, and I hate to admit a number of hours the three of us spent working on this. But in the final analysis, right before, well, I used Sage several times to clean through this, but my favorite moment was right before the semester started. I thought, you know, we got to do one more check, one more time. The other associate dean had gone through by hand, and he'd found one person who was not in both. And I went through with Sage, and I found 4 more people who were not in both. So thank goodness we had that at our hands, at our disposal. And then we have, for some reason, a record class coming in the fall, and so part of my job is to make sure they all get in a seat in the right courses. And so I was really worried about the number of mathematics courses, and you know, how many folks are going to need pre-calculus, how many will need calculus, this kind of thing. And so I took I got our institutional effectiveness folks to give us individual information on every student, and I was able to parse through it in Sage real easily and create a summary table that let me see, okay, here's who's going to need what. So I know how many pre-health people are coming and what their placement scores are and where they're going to go, and hopefully things are going to be okay. The third day of freshman orientation is Friday, so if I look a little green around the gills, I'm very worried. That's why we're right on the edge. I've calculated perhaps too closely. We're right on the edge of number sections we need. We'll see how that gamble goes. And now, here comes we probably shouldn't put this part on the web. We cannot have this mess again with the co-requisites. So one of our ideas is we're going to do some computer dating, and the students will be able to list their top 5 options, and then we're going to put them in. So I've got to match freshmen with their preferred spring semester writing course, and I'm hoping this will be a happy marriage. So this is a stable marriage problem in some sense, right? Or the residency matching problem really is what it is. And so this is going to be a fun thing in the fall for me. But lots of Sage. So.
Are you going to submit a patch? Like, that would be cool to have the residency matching algorithms.
That would be cool. Well, we'll see how it works. We'll see that, and how evil it is, right? How far into the dark side. So anyway, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Questions? Just a point that this whole Sage for the Dark Side thing is actually, I think that that's something that is a really useful thing to bring to the side of just administration in general, which is not necessarily very data, and we're not talking about doing kind of big data things, right? I mean, this is just, how do you do it not by hand in a way, you know, so being able to do it in the notebook or even with Sage Tech where you can just run, you can write a report that you can just, if the data changes, you just change the data and just run it again. I think there's a lot of promise there. It isn't Sage specific, but it's really interesting. And there has in fact been somebody doing computations of some of these stable problems with Sage, so I think you could get some code to
Get some help. That would be
yeah.
Yes, I've done also faculty annual reports, everybody's favorite thing. And I've done a little bit of that in Sage. Mainly that's some Python code that I've written that pulls that out of a Google Docs file and then dumps it into a bunch of LaTeX files. And anyway, that was kind of a fun programming project. Haven't done too much with Sage with that, but I'm going to need to extract some data out of there soon, so I might have to.
Let's see.